Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would give my little fight analysis and my fight review of the Shakur Stevenson versus Edwin De Los Santos fight. I was going to do a fight review over this. I wasn't going to do a fight prediction because, well, first of all, I didn't know that the fight happened on Thursday. It is a little bit odd why it happened on a Thursday. I very rarely see fights happen on a Thursday. So I really did not even know that this fight was happening today until literally a couple of hours ago when I seen, I believe, in a certain boxing post that the what's his name, Emmanuel Navarrete versus Robson Conceição fight ended up happening on the undercard of this fight and happened a little bit ago. Apparently, that fight was a draw, but I would have to watch that fight for myself. I didn't personally get to watch that one, but unfortunately, I did get to watch the main event. And listen, I'm not usually one to criticize, even when fighters may not have that entertaining of a performance. Shakur Stevenson, of course, did what he had to do in order to win. Now, let me also state this: the scorecards, I did agree with them. I thought that 6 rounds. Excuse me. What was the scorecards? That 8 rounds to 4 or 7 rounds to 5. I thought that that actually was the most fair scorecard possible. The ESPN commentating crew, for whatever reason, they were acting like Shakur Stevenson was winning every single round and so clearly, and I just didn't agree with that. In fact, actually, the first half of the fight, I think you can debate that Edwin De Los Santos ended up winning the first half of that fight. I gave Edwin De Los Santos personally the first 3 rounds on my scorecard. Now, after that, after round four, or after round three, Shakur Stevenson started taking over a little bit, and he especially started taking over in the second half of the fight. But of course, if you're a Shakur Stevenson fan, you're probably happy that he ended up winning. But this, in my view, was a little bit of a disappointing performance. And maybe it's just because, Edwin De Los Santos, maybe he's just awkward. It could be also that he's very, very powerful. We've heard rumors that in sparring and, in other areas that he's a very powerful fighter. We all know that he ended up knocking out Jose Valenzuela, I believe, within that of the first round. Or not first round, excuse me. I think it was like the second or the third round. Jose Valenzuela, who's a part of the no defense Benavidez camp when it comes down to it, or at least Jose Valenzuela does not have great defense. And Edwin De Los Santos, of course, he pretty much got exposure there, and I think that he was able to win a title. I'm not sure if it was a legitimate title or an interim title. I'm not really sure what. But either way, De Los Santos was able to win a title there, and he was able to beat Jose Valenzuela. And Shakur Stevenson, of course, I thought that he won the fight, but I do agree with the scorecards. I thought that 116 to 112, I thought that those were very scores that, I thought that that meant, or that would have meant that the fight would have been 8 rounds to 4. And another scorecard I even believe had it as close as 7 rounds to 5, which of course would have been, I believe, 115 to 113. And I also agree with that scorecard as well. You could easily argue, in my view, that Santos won anywhere from 4 to 5 rounds in this fight. Now, does this mean, in my view, that Shakur Stevenson is overrated as a fighter? Does it mean that he got exposed in this fight? Once again, I'm not really one to go after a fighter after they just have one performance that isn't really up to par. But in my view, this was not a very good performance by Shakur Stevenson. And the reason why it was not a very good performance by Shakur Stevenson wasn't necessarily that it wasn't the most entertaining fight. The reason why, in my view, it wasn't really that good of a performance by Shakur Stevenson is because, to be quite honest with you, Shakur probably landed about 80 jabs in this fight and probably about two total power punches within the rest of his hands. I mean, he landed certain punches, a little bit inside the clinch, but when you talk about straight left hand, straight down the pipe, to be honest with you, I don't really remember one left hand landing by Shakur Stevenson that was just straight down the pipe. And I thought that there were certain counters that were available for that to Shakur Stevenson. I thought that there were certain counters, certain risks that he could have took a little bit more. But it could just be that Edwin De Los Santos, he's a guy that does not have a big name. He's also very dangerous and very powerful. And Shakur says, I'm not going to fuck up my career by taking unnecessary risks against a dude like this when it's really not even a fight that is going to define my career. So I don't know. Maybe that's just Shakur's mentality in this fight. I don't really know. But at the end of the day, in my view, it certainly was not the best of performances. I thought that Shakur, his defense looked relatively good as it always does. His speed is phenomenal. His jab is one of the best in the business. His feet are great. However, the one thing that is majorly concerning to me is at times the lack of counters, especially against that power punchers, and just the lack of power that Shakur Stevenson seems to have himself, even, within those lower weight classes. Because even, certain people, they may talk trash about Devin Haney and they may talk trash about, a prime Floyd Mayweather, but Mayweather could definitely punch at 135 and 140. Now, once he got up to about 147, he probably became probably around a B grade level puncher. But Shakur Stevenson, when it comes down to it, I'm not even 100% sure if he's a B grade level puncher. If he's a B grade level puncher, he's about a B minus level puncher. That's not me saying that you're not going to feel his shots whatsoever, but Shakur seems to have a little bit of a problem even with himself, and believing in the confidence of his power. I don't even know if he believes that he has that great of power. And power is not everything. Timothy Bradley was mentioning something about, it's not all about the power. Floyd Mayweather Jr. showed us that, right? But Floyd Mayweather Jr. could at least punch a little bit. Like a lot of these fighters, they'll say that, oh, Floyd can't punch, but there's certain fighters like Shane Mosley and Cotto and other guys that would tell you that, Floyd may not be Marvin Hagler or something like that, but he can punch a little bit. He can punch you enough to at least keep you back. And Shakur Stevenson, I mean, maybe he has a little bit more power than what I'm giving him credit for, but this is the second or third time that I've seen this at least be a little bit of a problem. And Shakur has just never been that big of a puncher, and I'm not sure if it's going to be a major issue. But, when you have a fighter out there like that of a Gervonta Tank Davis, someone who also at his best can be a phenomenal boxer, but someone that probably has about 5 times, if not even more, the amount of power that you do. I mean, that might be a serious concern. We'll see. When we talk about the big fights, him fighting Devin Haney, I wouldn't really be as concerned about it in that fight because Devin Haney is not really as big of a puncher himself. But if he was able to hurt Shakur Stevenson and able to get him into a little bit of a trance and able to hurt him early and, keep him honest, who knows? He might actually end up losing that fight. But the biggest fight out there, I think, for almost anyone around that weight division is probably Gervonta Tank Davis. The question is, how would Shakur Stevenson do against Gervonta Tank Davis? And after this performance, I'm not quite so sure. I would like to think that Shakur would have a great chance because of his speed and his defense. And I think that he would be willing to take more risks within that fight. But, once again, the lack of power coming from Shakur Stevenson, just in my view, it is a little bit concerning because he has never really been a big puncher. And even when he was fighting against the not so talented fighters, within, even when he was a little bit lower in weight, he wasn't really even getting major knockouts there. Or he wasn't really even getting a whole lot of great power knockouts there. It just appears that Shakur Stevenson, that he just does not have a lot of grand power, which once again, sometimes that's okay. But when you face a lot of the times against those all-time grade level boxers, you are going to usually have to have some sort of level of power. It just is what it is. And it's going to be very interesting to see if Shakur Stevenson can handle that level of power from that of Gervonta Tank Davis or possibly some other fighters. It would just be very particularly interesting. I thought that his jab was great in this fight. His ability to avoid punches and his movement is always great. They're always up to par. But the main concerns that I have about Shakur is that when he's in an actual fight against a fighter that knows how to counter against him and a fighter that, is somewhat relatively slick and awkward, he appears overall to have a very big problem countering. And certain people were saying that, oh, Shakur, it's possible that his hand was injured. I'm not sure really if his hand was injured. I'm not really buying that excuse. And the reason why I'm not buying that excuse is because, unless his hand got injured in training camp or something like that, I just, I don't really know if I'm buying it. Because what did he really land in the fight overall for him to have an injured left hand? I just didn't see it. I just think that he was very careful and very tentative against a fighter that was dangerous in any moment and had power to possibly hurt him. And once again, I respect it, but in my view, it should have been a little bit of a better performance. I think that I needed to see a little bit more out of Shakur Stevenson in this fight, more risk taken a little bit, But of course, once again, I can kind of understand it because Edwin is not a guy that you want to lose to because if you lose to Edwin De Los Santos, your career is really going to have to restart over. So I kind of understand it. But once again, good on Shakur Stevenson for winning the fight. I actually thought that it was a relatively competitive fight, as lackluster as what it was. But I thought that 8 rounds to 4, 7 rounds to 5. To be honest with you, I thought that that was the perfect scorecard. I agree with the judges because I had it about 8 rounds to 4 as well. The ESPN analytics crew, or the commentating crew, they had it about 11 rounds to 1 or 12 rounds to 0. I definitely did not have it like that. I thought that the commentary was very biased in my personal view. I thought that the commentary was ignoring the fact that De Los Santos, especially in the earlier rounds of the fight, was doing more work, landing more jabs, to the body. And this is also another thing. There's no way that, those stats in terms of, the boxing, amount of punches landed, there's no way that those are accurate. Because they were trying to actually say that Shakur Stevenson, and maybe I'd have to go back and rewatch it, but who the hell am I kidding? I'm not going back to watch this fight. When it comes down to it, I ain't doing that. I'd rather watch paint dry. But when it comes down to it, I remember in the first 3 rounds, it looked like Edwin De Los Santos, it looked like he was landing more jabs to the body consistently and landing more jabs in general. And they were saying that Shakur was outlanding him in almost every round. So, those CompuBox stats, a lot of the times, those are not really that accurate. And some of those, to be honest with you, it almost seems to be fabricated. Because, I'm sorry, but there's no way, at least from what I've seen, that Shakur Stevenson was outlanding De Los Santos in the first 3 rounds. Now, after those rounds, yeah, he was outlanding him to a slight degree, but outlanding him within the first, part of the fight, no, he was not doing that. At least not, within what I've seen. Just my view of it. I maybe would have to rewatch it. I don't know. I'm probably not gonna rewatch it, but y'all will have to let me know what y'all thought on that one. But anyways, good on Shakur Stevenson. I thought, of course, he looked very crafty. He is a defensive wizard. He is a great fighter. Very quick, very speedy. Very, very great fighter. At least when it comes to his skill set. But there was some issues here. There was some holes kind of exposed in his game a little bit here. That you've seen a little bit in the past if you've watched enough of his fights. And he doesn't have many holes, but there's going to be certain times where he faces a fighter, and if they really, really, really take the fight to him, he's going to have to be willing to exchange with them, or he's going to have to be willing to really try and counter them. Because as Timothy Bradley was saying in this fight, Shakur really was not trying to exchange a lot of the times with De Los Santos. He was having his jab out there, and it was a very crisp, and a very, sharp jab. But other than that, I mean, Shakur Stevenson almost had no other punch in this fight than a lead hand jab. He almost had no other punch. So once again, hopefully we get to see a better version of Shakur Stevenson later on down the line. I don't really know who he's going to end up fighting next. I doubt it's going to be Gervonta Tank Davis. I don't know whether it'll be Devin Haney or not. The fight that I would actually love to see Shakur Stevenson in next potentially would be a Vasily Lomachenko fight. Because that would be truly a great test, possibly for both of those fighters. Lomachenko, of course, is getting up there in age. He's going to be 36 years old next year, and he's probably wore down a little bit already. But that would be a great test for Shakur Stevenson because Lomachenko for sure has power. He's a guy that's defensively responsible, a great offensive fighter, and Vasily Lomachenko is going to be pushing you the whole entire time in that fight. That would be a terrific fight, in my view, to make. That'd be an excellent litmus test for that is Shakur Stevenson. And if he can get past Lomachenko, that would really prepare him for someone like that of a Gervonta Tank Davis, in my personal view. But we'll see overall what ends up happening there. But good on Shakur Stevenson for winning the fight. I certainly thought that there were some improvements to be made. But one of the things that he clearly is lacking is that he just doesn't have that level of power. He's never going to be an A-grade level puncher, at least from what I see. He's just not, talented in that way. There's just certain other guys that are very physically gifted punchers. Canelo, Terrence Bud Crawford, in a way, Shakur Stevenson. He's just not one of those guys. Now, once again, you don't always have to have A-grade level power, in order to be an all-time great fighter. But it's going to be interesting once again because when you face some of these guys that really know how to box and know how to win a fight, and it's no offense against De Los Santos, but he just did not do enough to win this fight. He did not do enough to win this fight. You cannot fight a Shakur Stevenson and fight him completely in a jabbing match the whole entire time and expect to win the fight. He should have been pressing the action a little bit more. And I understand that, that's also probably another part of the reason why Shakur didn't land as many counters, because De Los Santos was not charging him and was not running into anything. He was being very patient, so I understand, but some also could argue that that should have worked to Shakur's advantage, because a lot of the times when a fighter is too patient against a real elite level boxer, that actually gives them more opportunity to land their punches because you're not making them uncomfortable enough. But it could kind of go either way in this instance. Shakur is still a little bit inexperienced, especially against top tier competition. So I'll give him a little bit of a break in this fight. But once again, as for Edwin De Los Santos, I don't really know where he's going to go from here. I don't really know what fight he's going to get into next. I would love to see him against a fighter like Isaac Pitbull Cruz, maybe a Ryan Garcia, someone like that. Maybe even Vasily Lomachenko, Virgil Ortiz, any one of those fighters. I would love to see him against any one of those fighters. Maybe even a rematch with, Jose Valenzuela, any one of those fighters. But like I said, if Edwin De Los Santos really wanted to win this fight, he needed to do more than just have a jabbing contest with Shakur Stevenson. Even if it looked like he would have deserved the fight and now jab Shakur Stevenson, more than likely they would have not given it to you because Shakur Stevenson is the favorite. He's the guy that's the A side. They're the guy that he has major future plans for them. So at the end of the day, you have to really try to win the fight, and that means that you have to really try to push the action, and that means overall that you're really gonna have to at times go for broke, or at least be busier than him and land the more impactful shots clearly, and you're gonna have to do that clearly. And it's no offense against De Los Santos, but he just didn't. He tried to play at Shakur Stevenson's game, and I agree with Timothy Bradley. It worked a little bit against him, so it is what it is. But anyways, that's pretty much about it. Congratulations to Shakur Stevenson for winning a title in another weight class. Now, once again, I'm not sure if that's really one of the 4 legitimate titles, or if it's just another interim or regular championship. But either way, a good introduction, I believe, at 135. I believe this fight was at 135. If I'm wrong about that, someone correct me. I believe it has to be because I already know that he won belts at 130. So I believe it was at 135. We'll see where he goes next. I don't really know who he's going to fight next. It could be overall Frank Martin, that new kid on the block at 135. It could be Lomachenko. It could be any one of those guys. I'm not really sure. Isaac Pitbull Cruz does not really seem super interested in fighting him. That would actually be a very interesting fight because Isaac Pitbull Cruz, even though he, even though he's a relatively one-dimensional fighter in my view, he's still very tough. He always keeps his hands up, and he's always going to be coming straight at you with very great power and a lot of tenacity and roughness. So that'd be an interesting fight. But I'd favor Shakur in that fight. Anyways, that's pretty much about it for today. But we're going to see who Shakur Stevenson truly is and how great he is once he finally starts getting in those bigger fights. But we'll see what happens. Anyways, that's pretty much about it for today. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later.